Good afternoon, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Happy New Year. We're finally in 2023, and we have a big storm system coming in. So, hate to say it, but we're going to start out this year with a bang, it looks like, with multiple days of severe weather and a pretty robust winter storm as well. So, we're going to go ahead and just jump into it. Start out with the severe weather first, because I'm sure a lot of people are very concerned about that. As for today, there is a marginal risk. This is over the desert southwest. Mainly a chance for all three hazards, but a very slim chance. Actually, the tornado threat is now dwindled. But there is a brief chance of a damaging wind gust, but beyond that, nothing really to be concerned with there. Really, the concern here would be more so flooding, if you were to ask me. Well, so let's go ahead and jump to the real story, which, as of right now, is day 2. So, day 2, January 2nd. This is where we're looking for our greatest potential severe weather for right now. Heck of a way to start out the year. We have a categorical outlook here. Our enhanced risk includes Little Rock, Shreveport. And this is also pushed back west as well since the last video I made on this. We can look at areas like Lufkin, Tyler, Texas is in there now. Longview, we're watching you as well. And then Bossier City, Louisiana. If I'm pronouncing Bossier City wrong, please correct me in the comments, by the way. But we also have that slight risk, which can't be discounted for anything. We have to watch towards Jackson, Tennessee. Greenville, Mississippi, Alexandria, we're watching you too. Houston, just a little bit to the east of Waco, we're watching you too, and to the east of Fort Worth, or Pasadena, we're watching you as well. Memphis too. So there's a lot going on there, and even then, while we don't really look at the marginal too much, Kansas City's in there as well. This is a city of note. Jefferson City, Nashville, you're just on the cusp of it. Jackson, Mississippi, you're in there as well. And Dallas and Waco, you are definitely within that marginal risk. So you could still see severe weather, although the chance is a little bit more limited. When we look at the hazard types, wind is going to be one of the main threats here. Mainly going to be centered around our enhanced risk is where our highest threat will be. Little Rock, Shreveport, Tyler, you guys watch out in particular. And then when we look at the hail threat, it's pretty much the same story. If you're in the marginal in the 5% area in the brown, you can still end up seeing hail, although the chance of seeing anything of a greater significance is a little bit lower. Now, the main story with this has been the wind and the tornado threat. With the parameters that are in place over in this region, the threat for strong to violent tornadoes are even possible in our enhanced risk region. So again, it's Little Rock. So this pushes a little further off to the west too. So Tyler, Pasadena, we're watching you guys. Parts of far eastern Oklahoma, you're in this as well. So pretty much just off to the east of the Red River is where our greatest area of interest is going to be. Keep in mind though, if you're still in this 5% and 2% areas, you can still see a tornado. Chance is lower, but it's not zero. So just because you're not in this 10% area with the hatched risk doesn't mean you should let your guard down. So that being said, we know what's going on with day 2. We've been covering that for a while, but now we're starting to really get into that day 3 timeline, which I've been also interested in as well. This day also has a lot more potential than what's being shown on here right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see this end up being upgraded to an enhanced risk in its own right when I've looked at the parameters earlier today. This slight risk right now includes Chattanooga, Tennessee, parts of southern Tennessee as well. We have Birmingham, Tuscaloosa in there as well. We have Mobile in there even. And then we can also keep a close eye on Gulfport, Mississippi. Jackson, you're in there as well. Starkville and many other places. Thankfully, some of these areas that aren't included in that slight risk are areas like New Orleans and Baton Rouge, which were hit just before the end of the year by a second tornado this year. Or last year, I should say now. So But even so, despite that, you are still in that you're still in that marginal risk. So your chance for severe weather isn't zero. Don't let your guard down, but I'm pretty sure you'll be ready this time, given the unfortunate circumstances. Some areas a little further off to the east that could be in that marginal risk include the cities of Atlanta, Columbus. You're in there as well. Dothan, Alabama, Panama City. You're flirting with it, but I think you're just off to the east of it. Nashville, you're in there. Bowling Green, you're in there. And some areas a little further off to the east. As of right now, the main mode is damaging winds, but I've been seeing something interesting on the models, and I'm going to show that to you in just a bit here. That leads me to think that there is more of a predominant tornado threat than what's being shown here. So let's go ahead and first take a look at the vorticity here. This is our storm system in the overnight hours tonight. And we'll watch this move forward. And this becomes a little bit of a negative tilt, but also becomes pretty closed off. As a result, though, we end up seeing, oops, I've jumped a little too far. We'll end up seeing this system having some very subtle forcing over this area once we get into the early afternoon hours of Monday. And this is what's going to be the key component in starting off our severe weather threat, especially over towards this region here. I think this region, as highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center, is going to be where the highest likelihood of tornadoes will be developing here. There's still some questions on the storm mode. I would say that we could see a mixture of storms. Some could be discrete, some could be linear and multicellular. So the best thing to do is just kind of watch. It's probably going to turn into a little bit of a nowcast situation, but the best thing you can do is just have a plan ready should a tornado warning be issued. If you have this luxury of time, I definitely take the time to prepare in these regions. Because these storms could fire early, they could fire late. This also has the potential to be a nocturnal event too. So this has to be monitored really closely on your end to make sure that you don't get caught in a bad situation. So we'll watch this move off to the north, and this is heading into the overnight hours. Still plenty of forcing here, but it's becoming a little bit more intense. I think this is when the cold front and the main line of storms will start to develop here. And then notice what happens as we go towards the afternoon hours of tomorrow, or the following day, I should say. We can see a little area right here, a little pocket where we could see some discrete storms forming here, little line segments as well, just based off of looking at this vorticity imagery. That being said, with an abundant warm sector here as well, there's very little reason for me not to believe that this could still spin off a few tornadoes, some of which could even be strong. So we watch this move forward, and then we're looking now towards the evening hours of Tuesday, heading into Wednesday morning. And there's still plenty of energy present with this system. Forcing is a little bit further to the north, but our main line hasn't cleared just yet through the southeast. So we'll have to watch and see what that does. Then, of course, I've been also keeping an eye on the Carolinas. No weather outlook, no severe weather outlook for you just yet, but I think that could very well change soon. I wouldn't be surprised to see a marginal risk. A slight risk might be a stretch, but I wouldn't rule it out either. So over towards the Carolinas, I'm watching you closely. Areas a little bit further to the north, I'm thinking you're not gonna have too much issue from this. Maybe watch out for some flooding rain, but that's about it. We'll watch the storm system move out, and by, I'd say, Thursday afternoon, the worst should be over. You may see a cool down a little bit more over towards the mid-Atlantic and Ohio valleys, but beyond that, nothing too out of sorts here. And then that's going to be that for this part of the forecast. We'll take a look at the low-level jet here, and we'll roll this forward. It doesn't really start to pick up until about noon, or maybe just a little bit after lunchtime. We start to see a pretty impressive little maximum that pops up right here around eastern Texas and heading towards Arkansas. And this will intensify as we get later into the evening and then into the overnight hours. some of the greatest energy will be a little bit further north, but we'll have to watch over here towards Arkansas overnight for the potential for maybe a marginal tornado threat and also a high wind threat. The wind profile is pretty impressive here, especially towards the low levels of the atmosphere. Towards the low levels, we have a helicity here of 415 meters squared per second squared. So the potential for a strong tornado is there. The ingredients don't really come together quite well enough around this time because most of our energy in daytime heating is used up. Although we are still sitting at 68 degrees around this time. So this is going to be an area of interest on Monday night. So we'll have to watch and see how things develop with that. And then when we move this forward here, a lot of that wind energy goes too far north and into a more stable environment. So even though you're seeing this higher low-level jet maximum here, for the most part, this area is not going to be of great concern. We can even see this on the helicity here. However, it looks like over here we do have a marginal tornado threat with this as well. And a pretty impressive wind maximum. So we'll have to watch over towards Indiana and Illinois early on. We'll have to also keep an eye maybe even towards Ohio towards the overnight hours and into the early morning. But I think the further east we get, we eventually will start to lose the dynamics here. We're already struggling with them as it is. And then, of course, by the morning time on Tuesday, nothing really going there. But then our concern will shift back towards the southeast once more, particularly towards, I would say, northern Alabama. We get towards about maybe close to noon hours on Tuesday. We have a marginal tornado threat around there. Dew points around the 60s, temperatures around the mid 60s, and a decent storm relative helicity, 338 meters squared per second squared. And even have a supercell analyzation on the sounding here. Cape's pretty limited on this though, so that could be a saving grace, but we'll see what happens with that. I don't think this is going to be a high Cape event, which actually would be somewhat more ideal in regards to maybe increasing the tornado threat a bit. So this is going to have to be something that's monitored real carefully. You may not even see a storm at all, or you could potentially see a strong storm with tornadic potential. So we'll run this forward a bit more, and this is heading into Tuesday night into Wednesday, and we still see these small little areas where we have these little maximums in the low-level jet here, and you can see a more predominant tornado threat with this. Very good helicity, 336 meters square per second square. And even the potential for maybe a stronger than EF2 tornado, although it's not a super high value. Probably I would say a 2 on the significant tornado parameter. Still something that needs to be watched out for. And this pretty much coincides with how things are during this time of year. When we look for any sort of severe weather activity, tornadic activity, tornado outbreaks, etc., it's usually going to be around the southeast. So this is about right, although I'm pretty sure this is not how people are going to want to start their new year. But we'll watch this low-level jet start to creep its way off to the Carolinas, probably in the morning hours on Wednesday. We'll have to see just how far this ends up pushing, because there might still be some dynamics here. A little bit of a question mark there. We'll probably know by the morning, and I'll make an update video for you guys in particular over here. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the dew points here. You'll get to see a good idea of what our moist sector looks like, as well as our temperature in just a minute, because there's also a winter side to this too that I will be covering in just a moment. But as far as the severe sector goes, we can already see this right around current time. You can see the moist sector already building here. got those dew points into the 60s and really starting to build up a little further back to the west than what was originally anticipated. And when we get into the early afternoon and into mid-afternoon hours, that's when this moist sector really starts to dig in here. A couple spots even could be seeing 70-degree dew points, but a lot of mid-60s and beyond around this region. So there's plenty of moisture to feed these storms, and that can be a key component in overcoming some of the Cape values. Although there is a possibility also that those Cape values could be underdone based on these forecasts. Go ahead and move this forward, and this is heading into Tuesday morning. Plenty of moisture still readily available throughout the southeast as this storm system rolls through, and this works its way to the east. Even once we get into the overnight hours on Tuesday into Thursday, we still have very rich dew points sitting into the mid 60s. Some spots even trying to flirt with 70. So we'll have to watch this area. Eventually, we'll watch Atlanta for the overnight hours because this threat may linger for you guys too. And then we'll of course watch towards the Carolinas and around the Appalachians. So let's make our comparison with the temperatures here. I mean, it's pretty good. You have a pretty good idea of what's going on just from the few soundings that I showed you. But simply put, our warm sector is pretty much going to be coinciding with that moist sector right there. So we can see right here where things are starting to develop already. And this is into the overnight hour, so it cools down. But look how quickly we warm back up as we get towards noon. Right around lunchtime for these guys, we're already sitting in the 70s around here. And then once we move this forward about 3-4 hours, a lot of places over here sitting over 70 degrees. Tornadic potential will be a little bit higher over in these regions. Marginal tornado threat, not super impressive helicity values, but this is not, but keep in mind, this is not the point where that low-level jet really starts to kick in. So the dynamics are there, man. They really are. So this is not something that's going to be played with here. This is a system that's not to be played with. I'm trying to make sure my grammar's right, but simply put, throughout the day, just keep monitoring the weather. If you see a watch, start putting that plan that you would hopefully have set last night into action, or tonight into action. And the following day, just be ready to execute. And then as we go into the overnight hours and into Tuesday, we're still sitting into those mid to upper 60s. Some places still sitting around 70 towards the Gulf here. And then tomorrow, we'll watch these areas over here start to push towards 70. And this will allow for a new severe weather threat. And then we'll watch this warm air get pushed further out ahead as the cold front moves in. So eventually, I do think the Carolinas are going to become a player. As to what kind of risk you may be entailed in, I don't think it's going to be anything higher than a slight risk, based off what I'm seeing right now. Areas a little further to the north, you can see that you're towards like the mid 50s, a few 60s here and there, but that moisture return is not going to make it far enough north to really be a factor for you guys. So if you were concerned because you saw that low-level jet and tornado juice, as some of us call it, I wouldn't be too concerned. If anything changes, of course, I'll let you know. But in all likelihood, I think you're okay here. So let's look at something a little bit different here. We're going to actually go ahead and take a look at the composite reflectivity, and get an idea of what kind of storm mode we could be dealing with, because that's going to be a key factor to a lot of this. As we roll this forward, you can actually see right here as I move this back a little bit, you can see the convection coming in from the Gulf, and this is right around lunchtime. You can see these little small areas of showers and storms developing right up through here. You can see a couple of discrete cells forming out ahead of this main line that forms further south. So it's these two spots right here where we'll have to watch closely for development of prefrontal storms And these are going to be the ones that will have the highest likelihood, I believe, to produce tornadoes, some of which could even be strong. And then here's the interesting thing. Watch what happens as we move into the early morning hours of Tuesday. This starts to dissolve here. And then a new warm sector develops out ahead of this line. And as a result, new storms will start to fire, some of them prefrontal. And the same thing could really happen here. Same potential for maybe a couple of strong tornadoes around this region. And then this line falls apart and then redevelops. As we head into Tuesday night into Wednesday, some discrete storms form. In fact, I see a little bit more robust activity over towards Alabama on Wednesday night, on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. So I would watch this area very closely, and then a new line develops back towards Mississippi. So this could be an extended type of deal where we could be looking at severe weather and tornadoes throughout the first part of this week. So, like I said, the best time to probably plan is the present, right now. So by the time you're seeing this video, if you're happening to see this video by chance over in these regions, do not wait. Make your plan now, so that way you don't have to think about it when a tornado watch or tornado warning is issued. Because I almost get the feeling that there's definitely going to be at least a couple of tornado warnings. Will this end up being a flop? Hard to say. These types of systems can be a little bit hard to predict given the fact they don't have high Cape values. But there is something there. There's definitely something there. No question about that. So let's go ahead now and take a look at the Cape values, and we'll go from there. And then we'll start to transition more towards the wintry side of this, because this has a nasty wintry side too. This is a very dynamic storm system. Storm system does have a name, but I've only maybe seen the name once or twice, so I don't want to get the name wrong and have people down my throat about it. So that being said, here we are looking at Monday morning, heading into the afternoon. Do have some sufficient Cape values, although not quite as robust as what I would expect for a more robust outbreak. We can still see that we're getting into that 1500 joules per kilogram area right around here, and then a little bit over towards eastern Texas. But it's really not until tomorrow where we start, or the following day, where we really start to get the higher Cape values, which is kind of concerning to me. I think Tuesday has the potential to catch some people by surprise here, because everyone's been so wrapped up with Monday. We're not getting the same kind of coverage with Tuesday here. I think with these Cape values alone, I think this could call for an upgrade to an enhanced risk. And when we looked at the low-level jet, it was still more than 40 knots over this region. So between the low-level jet, the energy available, and the still semi-subtle forcing that was coming from the low pressure all the way out here in the front, there could be a few tornadoes here still, some of which could still be strong. So this region, you guys over here, you're under slight risk right now, and don't be surprised if this gets upgraded. And I mean, if you look at the shear values over this region too, then you really start to see what I'm talking about. So this is looking, we're going to try to jump this forward a little bit, but you can see me looking towards the late morning, early afternoon hours. Here's our shear for tomorrow. And then when we look at Tuesday, we have a little moment where it kind of tapers off, this bulk shear, and then it picks up right around noontime. And we have plenty of values over 40 knots. And then look at that. We have, here's another sounding with a pretty sufficient storm relative felicity, especially at the low levels. Probable hazard type tornado. Dew points in the lower 60s. Temperature near the mid 60s. Again, low Cape value. So there could be a storm in here that ends up being discrete and is able to take advantage of this environment. It's a tricky setup, but if the ingredients come together like what we're seeing here, should a storm be able to take advantage of that, it can cause some serious problems. So that's Tuesday's setup, and then Wednesday we do see this bulk shear start to make its way over towards the Carolinas. So in the early afternoon hours or in the late morning, we're gonna have to watch these guys for their threat for severe weather. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the reflectivity here, because we also need to highlight the wintry side of this system here. Keep an eye on this 540 line right here, because this is our 32-degree line. This is going to be a key component in a lot of what ends up going on here. So one thing that I'm concerned about with this system is the threat for some icy precipitation, and that's mainly going to be centered along a corridor between central Nebraska and parts of northwestern Iowa. And you'll see it start to develop right about now as we head into Monday morning. We'll see this surge of moisture come in from the south side of this low pressure here. And then boom, we start to see that mixture of rain and snow, maybe some sleet in there, eventually transition into ice as we get further into the day. And these totals could get up to about a tenth to maybe a quarter inch, which is enough to cause problems in any part of the country, no matter how seasoned you are. A tenth of an inch of ice is enough to really impede road conditions, or really cause impeding road conditions. And then a quarter inch of ice is enough to weigh down those power lines to where we could start to see outages. And this lingers, and then we end up getting snow on the backside of it as well. Although the totals may not be as impressive, it's still going to be problematic in its own right. And then when we look back towards the severe weather threat now, we're pretty much seeing the same thing that we're seeing on the composite here. I mean, it's the same model, so it's not unheard of, but you can see that convection start to come in. This is towards the mid-afternoon hours when things really start to pick up. And then you can see this line develop here. But notice these little clear sectors. That's where I'm a little bit more concerned for the threat of a few discrete storms, maybe a couple tornadoes. And this is also nocturnal. So I hope that some of you guys here have some NOAA weather radios or something that will wake you up in the event of a severe warning, especially a tornado warning. Because nocturnal tornadoes are the deadliest tornadoes, statistically speaking. So here we are looking into the afternoon hours here. That line of storms kind of dissolves here, but then we see new storms start to develop here. And then as we get into the evening and overnight hours, a new line will start to develop, especially over towards this region here is where we're going to have to look for the threat of new severe storms, maybe with a tornado threat in its own right. But that's what we have going on there. Let's go ahead and start making some comparisons with the snowfall and ice totals here. So here we are. We're going to start out by looking at the Euro, and we're a little bit more light on the snow totals than some of the other models I've seen. Even so, there's still areas where we could see over a foot of snow, and this is mainly towards Minnesota and South Dakota. There's a small little part of northeastern Nebraska that's in play for that here, but we'll also have to watch that area for ice as well. Remember, on the backside of the system is where the snow is going to be coming in for a lot of these guys here. But this is the greatest area of interest right about here. Beyond that, though, there's not really a whole lot going on here. There's some areas where we could see about 6 to 8, some places even 10 inches of snow. But this is nothing too far out of the ordinary for you guys. This is nothing that you guys can't handle. This swath of maybe 2 to 4, maybe even a couple areas where we see 6 inches, that stretches all the way into northern Kansas, northwestern Kansas as well. But after that, totals drop off significantly. And by the time we get towards central Kansas, we're starting to see a trace of maybe next to nothing. So we make our comparison to the Canadian model, which is right here. Pretty much a similar look. We're seeing areas where we could see over a foot of snow towards Minnesota and South Dakota. Although this doesn't necessarily include the northern parts of the state quite like the other one did. In fact, actually it didn't. Thought I'd seen that. I guess I wasn't paying enough attention. But that's pretty much what we have going on with the Euro there. make a comparison to the GFS. It's a pretty similar look. Then the NAM 3 kilometer, there's a small pocket right here where we could get up to about over 18 inches in some spaces. Maybe even a spot having 2 feet. I'm not too sure if I'm sold on that, but we're not going to rule it out if it's being picked up on. Some places are seeing 18 inches. I do think it's a little bit assertive, but if the NAM's showing it, we can't discount the possibility. Now here is the National Weather Service blend of models. This is the model I'm most likely to go with here. It has a pretty conservative balance between all the other models, so to speak. And we can see here, we could still see up to a foot in some spots. And there's a nice little swath here where we could get up to about a foot between South Dakota here. Just kind of straddling that line between South Dakota and Nebraska. And then a small spot towards southwestern Minnesota here where we could see up to about a foot. That's where our biggest snow band is most likely, or snow squall is likely to occur. But other than that, it's going to be widespread areas where we see about 2 to 4 inches. Some places a little bit close towards that center of heavy snow where we could see up to about 6 inches. Well, further south we spread with this, the quicker the totals start to drop off. By the time we get to central Kansas, I'd say the totals become maybe half an inch or less towards trace. And oddly enough, North Dakota looks like it's not even in play for this system. It's like the moisture doesn't quite make it that far north, and the low doesn't really drag in any wraparound moisture for these guys, which I do kind of find interesting there. But that's pretty much it for the snow total. Last thing is the ice total, and this is where we have our greatest concern. It's right along, like I said, it's right along this corridor right here between south central Nebraska into Iowa here. The Euro is very aggressive with the ice. It's been warmer for the most part from the point where we started tracking this system out of all the others. So I'm not super surprised by this, but this is pretty bold. That's looking at more than half an inch ice. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll get up to about a quarter inch, maybe a little bit more than that, but we're not going to get up to about a half inch plus ice. Not from this storm system, I don't think. I definitely would hope not, that's for sure. But that's what the Euro is showing here. Other than that, we're looking at totals that are hanging a little bit under or over 1/10 of an inch. When we look at the Canadian model, it's actually a bit more aggressive, and this stretches a little bit further south too. A little bit too aggressive for what I think the system is capable of doing. I didn't mean to click the sounding. But GFS is when we start to actually look a little bit more realistic. It's a smaller swath of freezing rain and ice. But this also is pushed a little bit further north. I'm not sure if I'm on board with that either. But once we get towards the NAM 3 kilometer, it starts to look a little bit more realistic. There's a swath right here where we could see up to about a quarter inch ice around here. But other than that, mostly it's 1/10 of an inch or less. Still enough to cause problems, but not enough to cripple a town. If we get up to about a half an inch ice, oh my goodness. That's some very gnarly stuff, even for areas up here. And then, of course, last but not least, we look at the blender models here. And this is the one that I'm most inclined to go off of here. You can see an area here where we're starting to flirt with that quarter inch mark, but a lot of areas are here seeing up to about 1/10 of an inch of ice, maybe a little bit less. And this is also probably the most desirable outcome if we're going to have ice at all, is this one right here. Any of these other models, like sheesh, it's a little bit overkill, wouldn't you say? But that's all I got for this video. I know this was a long one. I'll be making timestamps in the description. You guys stay safe on this one. Looks like it could be a pretty gnarly storm system here. So just make sure you have your plan of action already set in place and execute properly. And I hope to see you on the other side of this without any issue. But if you liked anything I did in this video, if you found it informative, definitely drop me a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. I noticed I've had a couple of videos get over 1,000 views. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I make forecasts like this on the regular, especially for bigger storm systems. So feel free to sub and share the channel to anyone that may find it useful. But yeah, if you don't know, it's the end of the video now. It's been Tyre, Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys in the next one. Probably will be in the morning. You guys have a good one and take care.